What's the most fucked up thing you've ever did saw? I saw my little brother getting hit by a car and flying a few meters through the air when he was only 6 years old. Fortunately he didn't even break a bone, but damn, I'll never forget this. Spawn protection. It's a thing though, kids are more resistant to dumb shit like that for some reason. Softer bones don't break as easily. The most fucked up thing I've seen was a guy who had just been in a motorcycle accident bleeding out on the side of the freeway. He was clenching onto the hand of the girl who was the driver of the car involved. She was crying hysterically. I saw his hand turn white in a matter of seconds. I remember it whenever I see someone on a bike. Wow, for the past few months I've been really thinking about getting into motorcycles. Thanks for scaring me. Didn't see it, but it was local. Motorcycle rider was bunted off the freeway. He made like an airplane and hit a metal mileage sign. Foot, lower leg, traumatically amputated, arm mangled, hand mangled. The decision was made, due to the amount of damage, to save the one good hand from the mangled arm and transfer it to the other arm that lost its hand. The guy survived with one upside down hand. Metal workers might explain why the edges of these signs aren't rolled, so they don't potentially act like guillotines. I can't. Worked in a gas station in 80s, some guy came in after midnight and bought a cigarette lighter. He walked outside and went over to one of the gas pumps and pumped gas all over himself. Set himself on fire after that. After I tripped the emergency shut off for the pumps, me and another customer ran outside. The customer tried to put the fire out on the guy with his jacket and I used a fire extinguisher on the other things that was on fire. Eventually we succeed, but the guy was seriously burned all over. This was the 80s, so most of his clothes was of synthetic fabric that had melted into his flesh. His face was kind of melted too. The ambulance came really quick and he was taken away. He didn't die, but I never saw him again. I talked to some cops a while later and they said that he was on probation and was protesting about his treatment and tried to commit suicide. That's like, the most painful way to go. Why would he do that? Found my grandpa with a self-inflicted shotgun blast to the head, still alive, unconscious. I was less traumatized by that than my family's shock reactions. Edit. He died on the way to the hospital. He was also dying from skin cancer, bone cancer, and bladder cancer. I completely understand why he did it. I just wish assisted suicide was more readily available to make it less traumatic. I'm an EMT and honestly it's more so other people's reactions to things that sticks with me than the patient's injury itself. I was an EMT about a decade ago and I still have memories of this one call at 3 a.m. A young man about the same age as myself, early 20s. I was like 18, with probably every bone possible broken after a nasty head-on collision with a tree. Once he was finally extricated, I was the main person doing CPR on him. Luckily the hospital was less than 5 minutes away, and once we got in there and had him in the ER handed off, I was on cloud 9. Enjoying my adrenaline high and happy we got him to the hospital so fast. Then his mother came in. I didn't interact with her, but she interacted with one of the EMTs. Her crying screaming still haunts me to this day. Came right off that adrenaline high and went into Traumaville real quick. Same for me. Mine was a 50s man who died helping move his daughter into a dorm. The gore of the scenario didn't bother me, the hysterical wife who just lost the love of her life screaming in the trauma bay did. Like straight yelling, "Don't leave me, PT, God please don't take him please." It's very hard to not imagine yourself/your loved ones in that situation. It took me a while to stop mentally inserting my partner having the same reaction. Something I read that helped me was someone who said he reframed those feelings as selfish. He said the trauma and grief wasn't his to feel and that by doing so he was focusing on himself and not the actual people afflicted. That's just a coping mechanism I've taken from him, so I understand that it may not be for everyone. I once blew a pressure cooker up in my face. I managed to keep calm and put my face under the faucet of cold water until help arrived. Lost my shit when I saw the look on their faces. 100% other people's responses. Going off other people's responses, I have epilepsy and have had quite a handful of seizures. I've been asked the worst part and I tell them that it's the people who have to help me. When I'm on the floor having a tonic-clonic seizure, I'm out, I don't remember anything. But the people who see me like that sure do. I've seen videos of other people having the classic on the floor seizing and I have to wonder, is that what I look like when I'm out? It's always tough. For me, I get bruises and cuts after it's over. For everyone else, they get psychological damage during an unknown amount of time afterwards. Fatal hit-and-run vehicle accident that happened in front of me. A car got struck by someone who ran a red light. The truck at fault basically slowed down a second and then drove away. I stopped to check on the people in the car. It was a couple of teens, the guy having substantial leg injuries and the girl was unconscious and losing a lot of blood. Like, her pants, seat, and floor carpet were becoming saturated with it. She basically stopped breathing and lost her pulse before the ambulance got there. The guy was crying and begging for me to help her, though there wasn't much I could do. Once she was loaded on the ambulance, the guy started pacing around, on his bad leg, and basically having a panic attack. The ambulance crew and some firefighters were mostly busy with the girl, so me and one other firefighter were trying to calm the guy down. He finally collapsed in pain and another ambulance arrived to get him taken care of. I remember getting in my car to drive home, turning the radio off, having a "what the fuck just happened?" moment, then driving home in silence while trying to process it. Didn't get much sleep that night, obviously. I later learned that they never got her pulse back. She was either 15 or 16 years old. Don't remember exactly. Shit like this makes me so mad. Why would you intentionally put yourself and others at risk by running a red light? To save 15 seconds? That's not a reason nor an excuse for possibly killing yourself or other people. And then most of the time these assholes just drive off without giving a fuck about ruining or ending someone's life. I've just started driving not even a full year ago and it terrifies me. The fact that my life could end because some Joe's gotta go fast, or that I could screw up and kill someone just as easily. I've learned to always be careful when you're the first one pulling out of a light. I have a particular light that people run by accident near my house all of the time. I always look both ways when it's green because I've almost got hit a few times. Sometimes lights are in weird spots, and people really aren't paying attention. I'll take a beep from behind to hold off a second before I enter just to make sure. Still, the amount of times I've seen a red light and someone slow down then decide nah screw it, I want to go and then floor it SpongeBob style is disturbing. I witnessed a bad car accident once. The car launched off of an overpass as I went under it. The car flipped several times. It was like something out of a movie. I was the first person on the scene. My wife called 911. It was not a pretty sight. The first thing I remember seeing was a severed arm beside the road. There wasn't much left of the person's body. My sister and I saw a bad accident when we were kids. A guy who was drunk hit the ditch, and somehow, his car was launched up and clear over a bison fence before rolling a number of times. My dad told me not to look, I did, and he ran and climbed the fence to check on him. He had died. There was a woman and man who was following behind his car, who pulled over a minute or two after it happened. Apparently, the woman had insisted on going to pick up her husband because she didn't trust his friend not to drive drunk. She was wailing, because she was so frightened that her husband was almost in the car that crashed. It's not the image of the wreck that stays in my mind, I luckily didn't see any human remains. It's the sound of her screams. I know this sounds stoic, but I am glad that he didn't take out anyone else with him.